I am really pleased to be introducing Megan at this point. Megan Tucker is a professional chef, graduate of the Culinary Institute of America, and 24-year veteran of the food service industry. In 2018, Megan founded Mort and Betty's Vegan Jewish Jelly, where she celebrates local seasonal vegetables and reimagines foods of her childhood with plant-based ingredients. Megan, I'm so excited to be working with you again. Welcome to our presentation, and we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Hello, everyone. It's morning here, so I'm going to say good morning, but it might be afternoon or evening, wherever you might be. So I'm so excited to share some recipes with you today. We're going to be making jackfruit brisket, and we're going to be making some pressed mushrooms, which are a wonderful way to present an impressive dish for Shabbat, which could be in place of a roasted chicken or a beef dish as well. So we're going to start with the jackfruit. I have here a kind of a sample of the ingredients in the dish, and so I wanted to point out the jackfruit. Many of you may have worked with it before, or maybe not. Jackfruit is it's a fruit, as the name would suggest, but the jackfruit that we eat in savory cooking is picked underripe, and so it is not sweet at all. And it is like a flavor sponge. It will just soak up kind of whatever ingredients you place with it. And so for this jackfruit brisket recipe, I kind of threw some together early this morning, and I have it here on the stove behind me, but I just wanted to show you all of the ingredients. And so we're going to be sharing a document with recipes after the class today, after the workshop, and so you'll be able to replicate this recipe on your own. So I'm not going to go through
Megan,
things.
Just for quick context, someone is asking about jackfruit that's either canned or fresh. Do you have a recommendation, or what are you using today?
I do. So this is canned jackfruit. And for the most part, the fresh jackfruit that you could buy, usually at like an Asian market, is going to be sweet. That's going to be fully ripe, and so that's going to be wonderful in desserts and just to eat out of hand as a fruit. But it's not really going to work in this recipe. If you've had, I would say it's similar if you've had a Thai dish called green papaya salad. It's that idea where green papaya and ripe papaya are nothing alike. And so, so I would say that, the fresh jackfruit is not really appropriate to cook. Jackfruit's also available in a pouch often. And I would say that that's not the right jackfruit for this recipe either, because it's often pre-shredded. And so what you'll notice about this jackfruit is that it's these large chunks. And so in our recipe today, you can just throw the jackfruit in the pot like this. However, I like to give it a quick sear. You can see here that it's like a little bit browned. And so that just adds a little bit of an extra flavor, depth of flavor to the recipe, because we are essentially, this is in the style of beef brisket, and so we are looking for a complex flavor. And so along with the jackfruit, I like to do carrots, onion, and celery. Growing up, whenever my mom made brisket or pot roast, my favorite thing was always the carrots. And so I always do extra carrots, but it's always up to you, however you'd like to do it. And then the other ingredients in this recipe, we have tomato sauce, not like a marinara or a seasoned tomato sauce, but just the plain tomato sauce. We have red wine and vegetable stock, a little apple cider vinegar, and then a lot of the brisket recipes include sugar or honey and things like that. And a plant-based substitution for honey that I like to make is from apples. And so I take apple juice or apple juice concentrate that you can buy in the freezer section, and I reduce that down until it's a syrup. And then it's just like honey. And so basically all of these items go into a pot or into a baking dish in the oven, into a pot on top of the stove or in a baking dish in the oven. And we'll get into that later. I have it back here. And so I'm gonna let that cool for just a little bit. And then after we do the mushrooms, we'll shred the jackfruit so that you can see how it really just looks a lot like brisket. So, I'm going to turn this off and we'll get to that in a bit. I wanted to spend more time on the mushrooms because it takes a little bit longer to cook, and I'm also going to show you how to make a pan gravy with the pan drippings after the mushrooms have finished cooking. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people make when they're doing a roast chicken for Shabbat is they'll make a beautiful sauce to go with it. And so I feel like it's important to have that same experience here. So over here, I have a variety of mushrooms, and while everyone was logging in and getting settled, a few people were talking about wild mushrooms and foraging, and that is awesome. If you live in a place where that's available and you can tell the difference between mushrooms that are good for culinary purposes and the mushrooms that might make you sick, then that's amazing. I unfortunately have not been trained or taught how to tell the difference, so I stick to the mushrooms that I can get at the store. And so here I have several different types of mushrooms that lend themselves really nicely to the preparation style that I'm going to go over today. And so here in the front, I have my taki mushrooms, and these are like sort of a flower. And then here in the back, these are oyster mushrooms. They also have sort of a flower look to them. This is called a seafood mushroom. And then over here are enoki mushrooms. These are often eaten raw or as a garnish in like ramen and things like that. And then on the top, these are two different varieties of beach mushrooms. And ultimately, they all have a slightly different flavor and texture. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook them in a pan with a weight on them to press them. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to show you kind of the step to get it prepped up. And so the mushrooms are grown out of like a usually like peat moss or something like that. And so the bottom, often if you get them from the store, will have a little bit of the peat moss still attached. And so you'll want to just cut that off. And if you can, you want to try to leave the mushroom intact and not, break it into pieces. However, if you do, it is fine. So I'm going to do that. And then Lisa wanted me to mention the washing of the mushrooms, and that is important. And so the best way to wash mushrooms, this variety or otherwise, you know, even if it's just the regular button mushroom, is to get a bowl of water and add a little bit of flour to it and quickly toss the mushroom in the bowl of water. The flour acts as an abrasive and will pull any dirt clinging to the mushroom off. And then you'll want to lift the mushrooms out of the water. I'm not going to actually wash these today because an important step after washing the mushroom is to dry it, and that might take kind of more time than we have today.
Megan, are the ones that you're currently working with, are those the oyster mushrooms?
Yes, so these are oyster,
Okay.
and then I'm going to do the maitake, which you'll see with this one, there isn't really any dirt or peat moss in the bottom, and so it really just depends on, you know, where you're buying the mushroom, what kind of farm it came from, whether or not you're gonna have this stuff on there. And so we're gonna focus on these today, but I did want to also mention that the enoki mushroom, which is very common, I like to use this mushroom, and I'll prepare it in this same way we're doing today, but I will use the finished product in a chicken style soup. So if you're looking for like a shredded chicken texture in a soup, the enoki mushrooms are great for that. With that, perhaps.
And Megan, someone was wondering about an alternative to flour in the washing. If they are gluten-free, could you use a gluten-free flour?
So, yeah, anything that, you know, is like a flour, basically.
Okay.
So salt wouldn't work because that's going to dissolve, and sugar wouldn't work for the same reason. So anything that's not going to dissolve would work. I believe cornstarch would be too fine, and that sort of dissolves as well. So something like a chickpea flour, I think that would be a good one to use. So yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. So what we're going to do to get started with these, I have a spice mixture here, which is a blend of poultry seasoning, nutritional yeast, salt, and pepper. And so poultry seasoning is just a blend of aromatic herbs like sage and thyme, and marjoram. And so you can make it yourself, or you can buy it pre-made, just about anywhere. So we're going to sprinkle this on the mushroom, and then we're going to put some oil in the pan. I like to use sunflower oil for any high heat cooking. It's my preference, but if you prefer cooking with another oil, that's fine. You don't want to use something like extra virgin olive oil or extra virgin coconut oil for something like this, because the oils could break down in this heat. So we're starting with a hot pan because when we get going, it's going to cool the pan down quite a bit. And so we're just going to go straight in with the mushrooms. And I'm going to try to kind of keep the oyster mushroom that broke up a little bit. I'm going to try to keep it somewhat together. in the pan, and maybe we'll do one more.
Megan, is it possible to saute in water or broth if you're avoiding oil?
So it is, however, it's possible that the mushroom will stick. And so if you're going to do that, you're going to want to use a non-stick pan. And then also, it's possible that it won't develop quite the color that it would otherwise. So, but it's definitely possible. I believe it will be just as delicious. So we get these in, and we just want to make sure that they have a little bit of oil around, not too much. And I'm going to turn down the heat just a little bit. And then I'm going to set a weight on top. I've got another pan here that I'm going to place on top. And another one on top of that. And so, you know, you can kind of use whatever you have around. But the weight.
And Megan, the weight on it is it really like sort of compresses it so it has that more like meaty texture. Is that right?
Yes. So the mushroom, you know, there's a lot of air between all of these little mushrooms. And so cooking with a weight is basically going to change the structure of the mushroom so that all of these little round guys become flattened and pressed together. And that's going to create a really delicious texture. And so what we're going to do is go a few minutes on this side, and then we'll flip it over to the other side.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to ask Sarah to jump in now. Is this a good time for that, Megan?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect. All right, Sarah, we've invited Sarah from Jewish Veg, one of our other co-hosts, to talk to us a little bit about plant-based eating and health. So Sarah.
Hello, thanks for inviting me. I apologize if you're hearing a loud truck in the background. I picked the worst possible time. So I'm going to talk just a little tiny bit about health because I don't want to get too into it. We're here more for paying attention to these recipes. But while we have this moment, what I want to talk to you about is the value of health in Judaism. It's one of the core values that we talk about at Jewish Veg in regards to a plant-based diet because our bodies are where our spirit and our soul is located. And in Judaism, we have a mitzvah of shmirat haguf, of caring for your body, of pekuach nefesh, of saving the life or the soul of someone via caring for the body and making sure that our body is getting the attention, the care, the rest, and the food and the nutrients that it needs. And the essential thing that I want to communicate to you today is how our bodies need balance and why it's so important for us to be taking in nutrients that our bodies can process and can use in maintaining the balance of our systems, like for instance, our immune system, which I'm sure is on everyone's minds right now. So eating plant-based, what it does for your body is that it gives you the right nutrients in the right amounts. That's why eating plant-based has been proven to lower cholesterol, reduce risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes, in some cases even reverse type 2 diabetes, prevent certain kinds of cancers, and aids in treating chronic and autoimmune diseases, and more, because what's happening is that your body is taking these nutrients in getting the right amounts and knows what to do with them. When you eat animal foods and animal products, you're getting a lot of saturated fat and cholesterol that you're taking into your body. And those are things that your body doesn't know how to process. So they end up getting stored, causing inflammation, causing weight gain, causing a lot of problems within your body. Really, when it comes down to it, what you need in your diet is a foundation of whole plant foods, things like dark leafy greens, colorful vegetables, legumes like beans, peas, peanuts, whole grains, fruits, and nuts and seeds. If that is the foundation of your diet and the foundation of what you're eating, you're going to find that your body works so much better and feels so much better. And that's going to help you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Thank you, Sarah. We're going to go back to Megan and see where we're at with our compressing mushrooms.
Awesome. So just taking the weight off here. And so a couple of things, you can see that some water has already come out of the mushroom. Mushrooms are something like 70% water. I don't recall the exact percentage. It's hard to keep track of all of them because, you know, vegetables contain so much water, each one a different percentage. So you can see that they've already pressed a little bit. And so what we're going to do is just sprinkle a little bit more of our spice mixture on top, and then we're going to flip everything over. And you can see that the maitake here has already picked up just a little bit of color. And then we're going to flip all of our oyster mushrooms and the beach mushroom. And then we're going to go back. And so this process will take 10 or 15 minutes to kind of shrink and compress. So now that we've got it all flipped and back together, we can put a little more seasoning and then back with our weights. And so I wanted to mention that, you know, I'm using this poultry seasoning to give it sort of a chickeny kind of flavor. But you can really use any seasoning blend that you like. And so if you wanted the mushrooms to be more like a, you know, a brisket substitute, you could use paprika and garlic and onion powder instead of the poultry seasoning. The nutritional yeast helps give a savory flavor, so I recommend that no matter what direction you're going. And then salt and pepper, of course, is a good foundation. But then, you know, if you were making, if you wanted to go a different route altogether, outside of the like Eastern European flavor profile, you could use a shawarma spice blend and turn this into something like that. It really, the possibilities are endless. This is just the basic technique that you can then turn into so many things. While this is going, I'm going to show you the finished jackfruit. And so I'm just going to kind of put it on a plate here and show you how it shreds up. And so it turned out really nice. There's lots of carrots in there, like I was saying. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 forks and shred this. And so, forks here. So this shreds up.
Megan, can you just clarify what you did with the jackfruit? Someone was asking because I think there was so much information at the beginning.
So with the jackfruit, I put it in a pot with the tomato and red wine, the carrot, onion, and celery. And I seared the jackfruit in a little bit of oil first. And that is the same process that you would do for meats. So if you're new to plant-based cooking, it's basically the same process. And if you have not cooked meat before, and searing is an unfamiliar technique, basically it's taking your cubed jackfruit, drying it off, and then heating a pan over medium-high heat and browning each side of the cube in some oil.
And so just to clarify, you seared the cubes first before then combining it with the other veggies and the vinegar and the red wine.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And the recipe that I'm going to share with everyone later does not have searing as a step, but I think it adds a nice extra level of flavor and savoriness to the dish. So you can see here that we have a nice shredded texture. The carrots kind of become a little side dish in a way. At the end, I'll show you how I took this and made some beautiful Israeli style stuffed vegetables with this. And so, of course, you could serve this on its own like this, but you can also use this in place of a chopped or shredded brisket, or really ground beef, or anything like that in a recipe where you're combining it either in a casserole or a stuffing. Also often in plant-based or vegan recipes that you might find on the internet or in cookbooks, they're gonna maybe suggest that you use some kind of processed vegan meat substitute, like a ground something. And I know a lot of people are interested in plant-based foods, but they might not be interested in the processed foods, in the meat alternatives. And so this is a really great way to have a kind of chopped or shredded texture with really a whole food ingredient. And so it's very versatile in that way. So
beautiful. It looks amazing.
Awesome. So we'll talk more about this with the vegetables, or with the stuffed vegetables at the end, and then we're going to take another look at our mushrooms.
And Megan, another question that someone indicated, it looks a little bit more like a shredded meat dish. And do you have something else you would recommend if they wanted to make a sort of like a sliced brisket or a sliced pot roast and have an alternative?
Yeah, so if you wanted to have something that you could present more as sort of a steak or sliced brisket, I would recommend doing the mushroom dish and just using sort of the beef style seasoning of paprika and onion and garlic instead of the poultry seasoning, because the mushrooms you can present whole, and they turn out beautifully. It's a really impressive presentation. So yes, the jackfruit, unfortunately, it doesn't lend itself to like a full slice or a steak or something like that. But it is really great in anything where it's like a pulled meat or chopped or sort of ground.
And could a portobello mushroom be done that way and more sliced?
It could, yeah. great question. And there have been times where I've done that. And so I'll take a moment and tell you a little bit about Mort and Betty's, my deli. And so I make mushroom pastrami using this method where I start with, mushrooms. I have a spice blend that I put on it, and then I cook them in this manner. And so there have been times where I couldn't buy, nice fancy mushrooms like these. And so I would round up using portobellas or button mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, kind of whatever I could find. And especially in the beginning, when I was first testing the recipe, I did use portobellas a lot. And so you can definitely use any kind of mushrooms this way. And I'll say that if you don't love button mushrooms, you'd be surprised how delicious they can be if you prepare them this way, pressing them down and getting the water out of them. So again, we're just flipping these over, adding more spices. And so what's happening every time we flip them, the spices are kind of going in the crevices between the mushrooms and really permeating the mushrooms. And then I am gonna just kind of swirl the pan a bit. This brown liquid, that's just the water coming out of the mushrooms, and that is what we want to happen. So we're gonna go back with our weight. So I think now is probably a good time to talk about the environment.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to invite our partner Becky from Hazone in, who's prepared a little talk about plant-based eating and how it affects the environment and the climate. So Becky.
Thank you. Megan, you are making me so hungry. I'm really craving mushrooms now. Thank you. And jackfruit's also been a little bit of a mystery to me, and I feel very demystified about this now and excited to experiment. So thank you. So as Lisa said, I'm Becky O'Brien, and I'm the Director of Food and Climate at Hazone. We're a Jewish environmental nonprofit, and we do focus quite a bit on the connection between our food choices and the environment. And 3 reasons we do that are: one, that reducing how much food we waste and transitioning to plant-rich diets, those 2 things are near the very top of the actions needed to reverse climate change, and because their impact is so high. Another reason is food is central to Jewish life and tradition. Jews have been thinking about kashrut, what is fit to eat, for nearly 3,000 years. It's very normal for us to think seriously about our food choices. And transitioning to a plant-rich diet is an action that can be taken immediately. Generally, it's cost neutral, or it even saves us money, and it doesn't require special knowledge or training, though a great workshop like this is certainly always very helpful. So why does industrial meat and dairy impact the environment so much? I'm going to just help connect those dots for us here. And a lot of this information is from the book We Are the Weather, Saving the Planet Begins at Breakfast by Jonathan Safran Foer, which is a really excellent read that I recommend to you. So for the Earth, as with body temperature, a few degrees can be the difference between health and a crisis. And climate change is happening. It's here and now. 9 of the 10 warmest years on record have occurred since 2005. I live here in Colorado, and we have set heat, drought, and wildfire records all this summer. And as we know, there's catastrophic extreme weather events happening with greater frequency and intensity all over the globe, and they're disproportionately impacting the most vulnerable. So greenhouse gases matter. For the last 800,000 years before the Industrial Revolution, concentrations of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere remained stable for 800,000 years. Since the Industrial Revolution around 1750, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere has increased by about 40%. Methane and nitrous oxide are the 2nd and 3rd most prevalent greenhouse gases in the atmosphere after carbon dioxide, and animal agriculture is responsible for 37% of the human-created methane emissions and 65% of human-created nitrous oxide emissions. So between the advent of factory farming in the 1960s and 1999, concentrations of nitrous oxide grew about 2 times faster, and concentrations of methane grew 6 times faster than they had over any previous 40-year period during the last 2,000 years. And not all greenhouse gases actually matter equally. Methane actually has 86 times the global warming potential, which is the ability to trap heat, as carbon dioxide does over a 20-year period. And nitrous oxide has more than 300 times the global warming heat trapping potential. Because methane and nitrous oxide are significantly more potent than carbon dioxide in the short term, they are the most urgent to cut. And because they are primarily created by our food choices, they are also easier to cut. As they digest food, cattle, goats, and sheep produce a significant amount of methane, which is mostly belched, but also exhaled, farted, and passed in the waste of the animal. Livestock is the leading source of methane emissions. Nitrous oxide is emitted by livestock urine, manure, and the fertilizers used for growing their feed crops. Livestock is the leading source of nitrous oxide emissions. Finally, deforestation matters. The cutting and burning of forest is responsible for at least 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions per year. And according to Scientific American, by most accounts, deforestation in tropical rainforest adds more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere than the sum total of cars and trucks on the world's roads. I'm going to read that again. By most accounts, deforestation in tropical rainforest adds more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere than the sum total of cars and trucks on the world's roads. And about 80% of deforestation occurs to clear land for crops, for livestock, and grazing. So the methane, the nitrous oxide, the deforestation, that's all adding up to why our food choices and reducing the amount of industrial meat and dairy that we're consuming are so significant for climate change. Changing how we eat alone will not be enough to save the planet, but we cannot save the planet without changing how we eat. That's got to be part of the equation. And I'll quickly just say it's not all or nothing. So please don't tell yourself, as I actually did for many years, that you can't be a vegan and so not change anything at all. Every little bit matters. Consider taking just one action. For example, you could have one plant-based meal a day, which is what I do. You could pick one meat or dairy product that's irregular in your diet and replace it with a plant-based alternative, like what we're learning about today with jackfruit and mushrooms. You could play around with substitution and cut in half the amount of meat in a favorite meal like chili and replace it with beans or veggies or jackfruit or another fake meat substitute. So listen, we're in a global environmental crisis and Jewish tradition compels us to respond. Please consider responding by making changes to your food choices. It will be delicious. And with that, I wish you an early Shabbat Shalom in advance of tomorrow's global celebration.
Thank you, Becky, so much. We are going to turn it back to Megan, but Becky, you hit the nail on the head of why we love to do things like this, to show that there are some amazing and delicious ways that we can swap out some of the ingredients and still have these incredible traditional meals that we love and the flavors that we love. So Megan, I've put you back on our spotlight.
Great. So we are pulling the weight off again. And so you can see the mushrooms have really, they're not all the way there, but you can see that they have shrunk down quite a bit. But at this point, I am going to pull them out so that I can show you how to make the gravy. And I will show you some mushrooms that I made last night. Once the gravy is finished. So pulling these out, you can see that the pan has all of these lovely browned bits. The technical word for that is fond, F-O-N-D, French word. But drippings is what we kind of tend to call it in American culinary terms. And so I'm just going to pull out all of the mushrooms. If you felt like the oil had sort of overheated or if anything burnt, you could discard it if you felt like that was the best thing to do. But what we're going to do is I'm going to deglaze this pan with some wine, and then we're going to move into a smaller pan. And that wouldn't be necessary if you were, let me get this out of the camera. It wouldn't be necessary if you were cooking at home on your stove. However, because I'm using this burner, it would kind of take a little too long to make the sauce in this pan. So what I'm going to do is use this spatula to get the wine to pull up all of the delicious browned bits. What we did while we were pressing the mushrooms is create these browned bits, which adds umami to the sauce. And umami, if you're not familiar, is the savory flavor. And so when kind of the early sort of chefs and gastronomic folks were thinking about, salty, sweet, bitter, acidic as the basic compounds of flavor, they were not aware of umami, the savory flavor. And so umami is a Japanese term for savoriness. And so mushrooms are a great source of umami, and so is browning. So we're just going to transfer this, get all the good stuff out. And then we are going to add our other ingredients.
This is the gravy that you're talking about, Megan?
Yes, and actually I made a mistake just in talking and not thinking. I'm gonna wait to add this, I forgot. Sorry about that, but easily fixed. So we're actually going to just saute some shallots first. And so here on this plate, I have the ingredients for our pan gravy. And so into our pot is going to go the shallots. And so you could, like I said, if you were not cooking on a little burner like me, you could do this straight in the pan where you cooked the mushrooms. But this is just going to work out a little better for us today. So shallots. And then I'll go over the other ingredients while the shallots are cooking. We have garlic, we have thyme, we have some flour for thickening, and you can use a gluten-free flour or cornstarch instead. And then we have tomato paste and nutritional yeast, and I forgot to get a bay leaf, so I'll do that. One thing I did, you might notice the tomato paste is in a cube. I just started putting tomato paste in an ice cube tray, and this way I can like pop it out just as I need it, as opposed to having a can in the fridge that I may or may not use up. So kind of helps with wasting the tomato paste. So we're just going to saute the shallot for a minute or so until it starts to soften and get a little bit of color. And then we're going to go in with the garlic. And so another thing to mention, just like I was saying with the mushrooms, is that this is very flexible, this recipe. If you are wanting a different flavor profile, you know, you don't have to put thyme and bay leaf. It could be sage. You could put, you know, if you wanted a lighter sauce, you could do white wine instead of red wine. Really, the possibilities are endless, but I think this is a good sort of basic recipe. And so we're just going to saute the garlic until a little bit aromatic, and which really just takes about a minute as well. Garlic can burn easily, so you want to be careful with that. And then we're going to go in with the flour. And with the flour, you know, this is, like I said, the thickener. So we're essentially making a roux. And so we want to get the flour coating everything, because basically the shallots and garlic are covered in, you know, a little bit of oil. And then we want to toast the flour just a little bit to get the raw flour flavor out. So if you were using a gluten-free flour, you could do this the exact same way. However, if you were going to use cornstarch or arrowroot, you would want to mix that in with the broth later instead of doing this step. So I'm going to go with our tomato paste and nutritional yeast.
And Megan, I'm just going to give you a time check just because I know you're probably not looking at anything. We have about 6 more minutes. I know that you and I had talked about how we could stay on a little bit longer if people can, but I also know that some people might have to get off right at the hour, so just so you're aware. Okay,
so we're going to go in with our vegetable stock and mix very well. And then we're going to go back and add the drippings, which I added too early previously. I don't think this will finish before the end, but I do have gravy that I made yesterday. This will need to reduce and thicken. So that will take, you know, maybe 10 minutes or so. We're going to go in with our thyme sprigs and our bay leaf and just let that reduce. We'll add lemon at the end just to give it a little bit of brightness, but you could do a vinegar or leave it out. It's really just, it's up to you. So, yeah, so I think at this point I'll show you the finished stuffed vegetables and just kind of show you what the Shabbat table could look like with all of these things. Just doing a little trade-off here. And so with some brisket that I made yesterday, I made these Israeli style stuffed vegetables. And so there is a recipe for this that I will share with everyone. And so these veggies have a kind of traditional stuffing of rice and sauteed onion and herbs, and then they're baked in a tomato sauce. And then, you know, really it's just substituting the jackfruit for, you know, beef or lamb that, you know, would often be in a recipe like this. And then to go with it, I have a whole roasted cauliflower. And I think in a lot of situations, the whole roasted cauliflower can often be the kind of plant-based entree. And I think that's nice, but I feel like it's better suited to a side dish, personally. And so this recipe I will share with everyone as well. It's very simple preparation, but really delicious. You steam it first, and then you finish it in the oven with just olive oil and salt. You can really do whatever you'd like to kind of dress it up, if that's what you wanted to do. And then I did jug over the stuffed veggies, and that's kind of a spicy green sauce that really brightens up things like this that can be very earthy and you know, sort of the sweet and sour flavor profile. So so this is one idea of what might be on your Shabbat table. And then for the mushrooms, so here I have the pressed mushrooms that I made yesterday, and I have them alongside some seasonal vegetable latkes, and I'm going to share the recipe for that with everyone as well. And that's a recipe that I created. These are kind of recipes that I found, but this is a recipe that I developed for Morton Betty's, and then I shared it with the wonderful blog, A Jewish Food Hero, earlier this year. So since we're
Megan. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to jump in really quickly because it is about 1 minute from the time. So I know that Megan and I talked about that we can stick around. I think our partners can stick around too for a couple more minutes. And we have the Zoom room from the Shabbat Project for a couple more minutes over. So those of you who can stay, please do, and we can still answer questions. For those of you that have to get off, we understand and know that you're going to get an email with all these details, and that all of us, the partners, myself, and Megan are here to answer other questions, share recipes, and support you in this. But if you can stick around for about 10 more minutes, we can maybe get some questions answered that Megan asked. And I know there's one that I think Sarah is answering and typing about protein. And then the one other thing, Megan, someone asked, could you stuff those peppers with jackfruit, with shredded jackfruit?
Yes. Oh, and I'm sorry, I might not have been clear. So the stuffing with the peppers is the jackfruit, brisket, and the rice. So basically, this is like a way to utilize the jackfruit that we made earlier. So just combining, you know, this jackfruit with I did sort of a rice blend where it's brown rice and barley and buckwheat, and then sauteed onion and some herbs. And then the tomato sauce. So yeah, sorry, I wasn't clear about that. So I wanted to show the mushroom, just kind of, you know, this was the same maitake that we started with at the beginning, and so you can see how flat it's gotten. And so this really is like a steak in a lot of respects, and it just takes some time to get it there, of just, you know, flipping back and forth. And so to finish this, I just wanted to put some of the gravy on. And this one is not quite there yet. This is going to need to cook down a bit more. And so I have some gravy that I made yesterday, and I'm just doing some of that over. And so, so the full recipe for the gravy, I will have, I'll share with everyone. And, you know, with a lot of these recipes, I try to find something that existed, you know, on the internet that came from a reputable source. But I couldn't find one for the gravy. There were plenty of vegan gravies out there, but nothing where you're using pan drippings. And so, so yesterday I tested this just to, you know, make sure it works. So And it turned out delicious. I was really happy with it. And so basically, you know, I feel like this would be an awesome dish for Shabbat, or, you know, Shabbat during Hanukkah for sure.
For sure. It looks amazing. It's so beautiful, and I cannot believe how much you fit into this hour and how many options we are going to be able to send out to our community here. And everyone is saying in the chat that they wish they could smell it all. So hopefully we will figure out that function in the future. I wanted to just say for the last maybe 3 or 4 minutes here, if anyone has any pressing questions, we can ask Megan. And if not, I know that Melissa had another thing to say about brachas, and we could close on that note. Yes, we are going to send recipes to everyone. Melissa, why don't you come in and if you'll share that with us?
I just wanted to say that I got really excited yesterday when I was looking at like how to connect Shabbat and plant-based meals. And perhaps y'all know we have an obligation to say 100 brachas a day, theoretically. And so we can do this in lots of ways, but one of the things we do most often is eat, of course. So on Shabbat, we actually say fewer blessings are baked into our normal prayer times. So we kind of have to like make up that quota. And as you may remember, and the blessing over animal products is kind of one note. It's only one blessing. So the diversity of blessings that we get from food are actually over the grains and the vegetables and the fruits and all the other delicious plant-based foods that we get. So I thought that was one cool way of kind of conceptualizing how we enrich our Shabbat experience. And again, if you're concerned about your bracha quota, that is also another way you can make it up on Shabbat and Yom Tov. And I also want to do a quick plug for Megan, because if you're based in the LA area, Megan does an amazing weekly bake sale of her challahs and other baked goods. And you can just go see her lovely face at Bestie's Vegan Paradise, which is a delightful vegan grocery store in the Hollywood area. So if you're around, please go support her and say hi.
Thank you. That's awesome. Are there any final questions from the group? You can type them in the chat, and Megan, I'll turn it over to you while we're waiting to see if there's any questions, to see if you had anything else that you were going to share.
Well, I did just want to show that the gravy is thickened up quite a bit just in the last couple minutes, and I would say it's almost ready. So just to kind of show that it doesn't take too long to make a really delicious gravy. And I did want to note that the tomato paste in the gravy gives a lot of savoriness. And if you wanted a lighter gravy, you could leave that out. So if you wanted a lighter gravy, I would do white wine, no tomato paste. Yeah.
Awesome. It looks so delicious, and I know how much preparation you put into this. I am so thankful to you, Megan. And we do have one question. Can you freeze uncooked mushrooms, do you know, like hen of the woods, like if someone found them but couldn't cook them? That's a tough one, huh?
Yeah, so I have frozen mushroom, raw mushrooms that I intended to use for stock. And so, you know, in making the mushroom pastrami for Morton Betty's, often I would have, you know, just a huge amount of shiitake mushroom stems, and things like that I would freeze, and then make stock out of. Generally,
awesome.
when you freeze vegetables that are uncooked, it will change the texture a little bit. And so if you are, you know, mushroom hunting and you just, you know, find a ton and you wind up freezing some, I would just know that they might be a little spongier when you defrost them.
Interesting. Thank you. Well, I want to thank the Shabbat Project for partnering with us. I want to thank Megan for the amazing work and preparation she put in. I want to thank the partners and co-hosts who were helping today. As you know, you will all get a email with all the details. We are here to help you with other ideas and recipes. We are so thankful to all of you for joining us. We will put ways to follow up with us afterwards, but I'm going to do particularly a shout out to Megan on Instagram. She's at Chef Megan Tucker. She's at Morton Betty's. And for her recipes and videos, her YouTube channel is at Chef Megan Tucker. Thank you for putting it in the chat, Melissa. I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, and so great to have you all here with us today. Thank you everyone so much.
Thank you.